So I am not David Deppner. I know I was a last-minute scratch from the agenda, so I appreciate all of your time here. If you are looking for how to accelerate your advertising through AI, you may be surprised, but hopefully not disappointed. So for those who don't know me, my name is Eric Erway. I've been with the Magento and Adobe community for over 10 years. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, really talk about innovation, and I've done various flavors of this talk at a couple of the more recent Meet Magento events, and really this is the next evolution of that talk in terms of what do we do next? We've talked about the stories of the community, and if this is your first event, if this is your first time in the community, those are incredibly important. Those are the reasons why Magento is so special. But it's time to get going. We need to talk about innovation. We need to start small. We need to iterate. AI, of course, is out there. I promise we'll cover that here as well. But a little bit about me. So for those who I know, my life has changed a little bit more recently. Life moves fast. I think everybody knows this quote. If you don't, maybe I'm dating myself. That is definitely not me. It might have been 30 years ago. And this idea where, life moves fast. If you don't look around, you could miss it. And the reason why I put that there is my situation has changed. My time with the community has been in different fits and fashions. It started off with Magento, then acquired by Adobe, then worked with two small partners, and it was two weeks ago I'm available for work. But the interesting thing is the story of kind of where I started with Magento 2, the story of the community as well. And for many of those who may or may not recognize this by far are some of my most famous, or my more famous, beloved moments within the community. And this is the Big Dam Run. Brent Peterson, who is probably here somewhere around here, I can hear him yelling in a megaphone, trying to get us to go through, crazy trails outside of Las Vegas just before Imagine. And to get innovation, you need community. There's no better community on this planet than Magento, and you heard a lot about that earlier today during the keynotes. And what you'll start to realize is that, yes, it's more than just a product. It is a community, and Magento gives people a reason. I've never run a 10K before. I ran one with Magento. I got a medal. You've got a lot of other folks that had their very first run, very first 10K, and allows you to do things you've never done before. And at this time, it's more important than ever. So during my time at Magento and Adobe, I also led several different workshops. These are really, really popular back in the day at Meet Magentos, and these are design thinking workshops. Now, what made these novel is that we took basically an open source, a series of principles, a series of methodologies around design thinking, and we would do this at events like this, which was Magento Live Australia, and we would open source our process to developers, partners, and merchants. And why that was really important is that we needed it anyways to deliver Magento 2 when that came out in 2015. But we also knew that our community needed it as well. And so that became a bit of a flywheel effect, and it was one of the more popular sessions for years back in the days that still, I would say, still reigns true in terms of its value right now. A couple other areas I was involved with. I helped lead the product launch and the product management function for the 2.4 release back in 2020. And it was also involved in Luma. Fun note, that was the photography was shot off the coast of the Jersey Shore. It is still in use today. And then the PWA storefront that you see here, Venya, that is part of the underpinnings of the edge delivery services that you saw from Ritesh earlier as well. But after about 8 or so years at Magento and Adobe, I decided I needed to take a break. And what was really interesting about this was the community response. That break was at a startup, and that break after about a year or so, came to a bit of a halt. And so I had this moment where I sat down with myself, thought about all the things that I really missed about the Magento community, and I decided I really want to get back. Ironically enough, and I've never met him in person before, as I share this to the world, Shopify's own CEO reached out to me and dunked on me during what was a fairly low week of myself. But what was really even more interesting was the Magento community had my back, and that's really the point. And so no matter what happens, life comes at you fast. Magento community will always have you back and have your back, and that's something that can't be replicated. It's not something that AI can do. There's trust in this room. I have friends I've known for a long time at these, and I'm making new friends along the way with the same premise. My situation, of course, has changed in the last week or two as well. There I am with my coffee mug. You'll see a lot of pictures of that over time. So just reflecting on that as well. We'll see what happens. But one of the things I think that brings me a lot of energy is the fact that despite our community being the community and being as valuable as it is. The reality is our community is the product. And so it took me a while to figure that out. And as, for someone who has had, a couple different twists and turns over the past couple years, take a lot of peace in that. And the reality is, with the community having your back, with what we've created, you can't do that overnight. I've had the opportunity to work with different platforms over the past year or two, and I'm not seeing anything like it. Other communities that are maybe even much larger are very, very closed. Other ones are still figuring themselves out. And then others like this are people we've known for a long, long time, and it's been great to see many of you. But like any story, whether you're a person, a process, or a technology, they often follow a 3-act structure. If you're not familiar with this, the 3-act structure is probably used in any story you've ever read, any movie you've ever read. Disney does this with every single movie. It starts off with an inciting incident. Whether it's my story, your story, the story of Magento as well. The inciting incident is all about the moment where there's a call to action. And so we'll talk about that and relate that to Magento in a second. The second act is the midpoint. It's the idea of a rising action. It's the idea where the character realizes there's a lot more work to be done. And at the very end, the climax. It's very much where we are right now in the history of Magento. And that's really where it takes everything you've learned to date to overcome the biggest obstacle or the biggest opportunity, depending on how you look at it. So if you apply that to the history of Magento, Act 1 goes back to the very, very early days. And there's at least 1 or 2 people from the earliest of days when this was done in a garage with Roy Rubin and others. And for those who don't know, Magento was actually Magenta, and it changed over time. My daughters actually used to correct people. I never corrected them correcting people, saying, no, it's Magenta. No, it's Magento. It was pretty funny. So it all started with that, and they all had the same call to action. They wanted to create something they'd never done before. It was done by a close-knit group of developers, speaking often the same language, PHP mostly, and in a way that really carried a common mission. Act 2, around 2018, is when Adobe acquired Magento. I was still part of the company at that time, and the community started to look a little bit different. They were growing around a series of an ever-changing platform decisions around headless, APIs, and innovation started to take shape along the edge. And you started to see some really interesting ideas from the partners, really interesting ideas from the community. And although there were there's some differences in culture, some differences in language, maybe not as much PHP, a little bit of React here and there, maybe some Vue, maybe other things. It changed, but it looked differently, but there was still innovation that was happening. And of course, Adobe was also at the center of this, releasing quite a few innovations around Sensei-based search, well before generative AI, product recommendations, and a few others that were shipped throughout that. Ultimately, though, we're in Act 3. Act 3 is the climax. That's where we face our largest challenge to date. And so I was really inspired by what Mateus and others said this morning. If you don't believe we're at the most interesting and really the most exciting time of Magento, let's catch up afterwards. Let's catch up tonight. There's a lot of innovation happening, but we're probably a bit too quiet about it. Adobe, Magento, MageOS, and Hoover are thriving in what I would say is a loosely coupled but tightly aligned series of communities, not unlike the architecture of Magento itself. Innovation is happening already at the edge with merchants, partners, and developers, but it may not look the same as it did a couple years ago. There's a lot of great work that's still built around a rock-solid core that's still a fundamental part of some of the things that you saw from Ritesh earlier. And that all that said, the platform itself, in many cases, is really just a part, and a very small part of the picture. So the one question you might be asking, and this is kind of where we left things off at Meet Magento New York a couple months ago, is where do we go from here? Well, the reality is we've had the playbook, we've had the blueprint for 10 years. Design thinking isn't, much like AI, is not going to solve the world. But, I would say the antithesis to AI is the fact that we can use technologies to then apply those to solve the right problem. So no matter what happens, technology will always change. But if you really think about the premise of design thinking, empathize, which is really immersing yourself in the problems, defining, shaping those in a way, ideating in a way so you can rapidly think through those, sometimes without bias, and then prototyping and testing those haven't changed, and those haven't changed for decades. They're the same principles that are used in governments to solve some of the biggest problems that you can ever imagine. But I would make the argument in this day and age that there's a lack of empathy. Empathy is one of the things that can't necessarily be replaced with AI. AI, I think very much so, can help us speed through the process, go all the way from empathize all the way to test much faster than ever before. You can get through those breakthrough moments. You can start to put together some suggestions. You can definitely use it to help analyze and summarize what you're seeing. So you're able to use the same methodology, but faster, using a lot of the tools that are out there today. But there's a lack of empathy. If I wasn't here and you'd hear some voice AI talking through all of this, it's not quite the experience. I think meetups and Meet Magento events are on the rise again because people want to have that human approach. We heard this in one of the previous sessions here, where there's an authenticity that is often missing with everything that's happening here. So I believe there's a lack of empathy. I think that applies to people, process, and the technology as well. The short version of empathize is really around having that beginner's mindset. You can look at other communities like the Jeep community that often struggles with the same topics that we do as well. And what has happened is the community has taken the core product itself, being the Jeep, and it has extended those in very, very interesting ways. Third parties have kind of taken the reins and done new and interesting things. Innovation is happening at the edge, and it's not coming from the Jeep company, right? So I drive a Jeep, by the way, and I still don't get the duck thing. I don't have any, but that's another topic. But when you think about these other areas, it's always been there. It's often though, and what we found in our sessions, what we found at Meet Magento York and what have you, people don't spend enough time in this. It can't be replaced. It can't be replaced, but it can be enhanced and accelerated with AI. Quick time check. We're talking about AI. It's only been 14 minutes, and so we're getting there as well. So, what does all this mean though? In an AI-first world, we still need to solve the right problems. Solving the right problems or solving them incorrectly can be very expensive. It gets a lot more expensive, by the way, by the time it hits engineering. And if you extend the idea that there's a lack of empathy, I would almost say there's a lack of trust. I've had a couple conversations with people I've known for some time in the community over the past day or two here at the conference, and people are really struggling with this. I trust people, and I would say it's much easier to do certain things in person than you would say over the phone. There's some situations I've heard where you could potentially have one Gen AI prompt go against another Gen AI prompt with an interview or a proposal or what have you. And we're running this situation where what you see, what you read, who you talk to, even the products and the capabilities that they present are hard to trust because you go, did they do it themselves? Did they do it right? And of course, there's always the fear, especially with AI, that it may not be trained enough. Somebody may have done it very quickly, and it's not solving the problems the right way. So I would say there's an opportunity for us to step back, validate what we see, just go back to first principles using design thinking or similar, and make sure that we're doing it well. But I would say there's a lack of trust in this era of artificial intelligence, and we're very quick to think it's taking over, and but it is helping us enhance and move faster. But we just need to do it very, very thoughtfully. Another area of empathize is really thinking about secondary data. Adobe's done a great job of this recently, and if you think about it from a community perspective, if you read the fine print, Adobe is considered one of the leaders in these reports, but the reality is, our community and our partner ecosystem is considered the highest of all the different platforms out there. In fact, it's actually twice as high as the average. So it's high by a lot. So it's recognized as a place where people can really build and thrive and create great experiences. In addition to the report, I think one of the reassuring aspects of this is that people don't see, and again, the keynote resonated with me earlier today because there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, especially from other platforms. If you hear from the analysts, they're actually saying people are doing more with less. They're actually taking their existing platforms. Maybe they're changing out their tax services. Maybe they're looking at shipping. Maybe they're looking at changing out their front end. But it's expensive. It's time consuming. It often can be risky. And so I think this idea that things are migrating or moving away, it's not happening maybe at the clip that people think. And there's often a return effect, a boomerang effect that's happening as well. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. You can find partners that will help, that they can get that report and take a deeper look. But I would say the truth is more optimistic than I think people feel. This is a little bit dated because I just found out about this last minute, but the 2024 data is very encouraging around e-commerce. Again, we saw I would say strong signs of growth. Mobile first is very much a thing. We have been talking about the Magento community for seemingly forever. It's finally taken over, and the holiday data continues to show it, and it's starting to spread it out against the traditional boundaries of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, et cetera. So if you're not there yet, there's, it's there, and that's where that's basically where all of your customers are at the moment. In addition to that data, again, when you think about empathize, there's a lot of activity here. So Mark Schust had shared this probably about a year or so ago. And if you look at the overall start history of the platform itself, there's never been a better time. There's never been a more active product and contribution in this. And these numbers are as of yesterday when I pulled them. And Perul is sharing, and team are doing a lot of great work behind the scenes, if you haven't noticed, around the community-led prioritization initiative. So the work is actually helping to contribute, shape, and build a better core product. And beyond all of that, Adobe, when we think about the innovation happening at the edge, is focused on extensibility, infrastructure, security, all the hard things that need to happen so that we can all work on the fun things. We can all work on the innovation. We can all create the next big thing that will help build off of this. And none of this can be done without the Magento Association, who's helping really glue things together. And then even some of the Magento, some of the Mage OS work that's happening. If you haven't seen their new idea for the admin interface for Magento, it's definitely worth a look. It's been in testing for quite some time. So talk a little bit about the communities, the product. But what if we flip that around a little bit? It's similar, but different. But what if our product is the community? Again, and I believe this. I've been in this for 10 years. I keep coming back to it. Our product is the community, and if you take that one step further, our innovation is the community. What we do, how we do it, is unlike any other place I've been in my entire life. And I'm a bit older than Ferris on this, and I've been a couple places before. I've never seen anything like it before. I've never even been to a place that is really kind of taken the reins, other than maybe the Jeep community outside of all of this, and done new and interesting work. So if you look at it like that, there's a lot of areas and a lot of surface area within this community that we can start to tackle. Innovation's happening, again, at the edges in many, many forms. Rarely in kind of dedicated labs-like effort, but you see a lot of innovation, a lot of work, and we just saw the session from Al Valera around taxes. The hard work that needs to happen is often overlooked, and I saw this with shipping recently as well. But these are key experiences that can offer, with your existing platform, a great way to help you, raise average order value, raise conversion, et cetera, without major change. But with all that work that's in front of you, it's easy to overlook the fact that there's some innovation that needs to happen. The reality is, resources are constrained. There's focus that's needed, and some of the heavy lifting that really needs to help tackle some of these areas. And I think a lot of them are well served, are often in the Magento world around things like build and deploy, upgrades, and things like that. So what if we started to, as a community, innovate areas that are probably underserved? And we're seeing some really interesting work in this area. What if we apply AI to build and deploy? What if you apply, automated testing and upgrades in situations to help people have, let's say, SaaS-like experiences, but without the constraints and really without the control that you may give up in those types of situations? So flexibility has always been the case. One of the phrases that we used to use in the office a bit is, one of the best parts best aspects about Magento is great flexibility. One of the biggest challenges is great flexibility. I see it as a big opportunity, and so you want to have that flexibility, but sometimes it comes at a cost. And once you start to unlock this, you can innovate any way you want, and you start to build and really build out new and interesting things. And I'd love to see that again. I would say my call to action for a lot of this here, right now. We have an opportunity to work with each other, put together ideas, and maybe we come back to hackathons. Maybe we come back to some of the contribution days, the pictures that you saw here. It looks different. The innovation is happening at the edge, but there's never been a better time to get involved in the Magento community. I've been there. I keep coming back. I'm telling you, it's and again, if this is your first conference, dig into the history. There's a lot there, but there's also a lot to love. So a couple key takeaways. And again, there's been different twists on this. The community is the product. Matthias said himself, get involved. Actually be a little bit noisy. Nothing is better about a community when the community talks about itself. You don't want to hear from Matthias, you don't want to hear from me, you don't want to hear from Adobe, just one singular voice in each one of the room. It takes a village, it takes all of us to say, this is what works, this is how we get involved, and hey, maybe there's a new and interesting thing that I've done with Magento to solve a problem for a merchant. Let's keep doing that. The case studies, I think, are a really good start, but even some of the work that I've seen recently from Jakob and others, I think are really great innovations to help spark some of that community that I know some of us have seen in the past. Where do we go from here? Innovate at the edge. Don't wait for anybody. There's nothing holding you back. There's a lot of great work happening with the partners. Again, you see this even in the tax world with Avalara that we saw previously. I've seen it in shipping. We've seen it in others. There's so much work that's out there, and that's really encouraging to see some of the innovations happening in the edge. And last but not least, our innovation really is in the community itself. There's no better community that's out there. I firmly believe that. Again, I've seen a lot. My hair's grayer than when it started. Not because of that, it's just age, it happens. But in this AI-first world that we live in, you're not going to find a community that's going to pick it up, move faster because of that, and allow us to get to work. Because if we start taking care of the little things, let those things get out of the way, and for us to start working on some of the interesting problems. So, with that, I appreciate your time. I thank you all for joining the session. I know it was a bit impromptu. I'll be around at the conference, tonight and tomorrow, and look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you so much.